Imagine stepping out of a metallic capsule, the door hissing as it breaks a seal millions of years in the making. Your first instinct is to gasp, but the air doesn't burn. It heals. It's sweet, thick, and impossibly light. This is the Carboniferous Period, 350 million years ago, and you have just inhaled a drug called 35% oxygen. In the modern world, 21% oxygen keeps you alive. At 35%, your cellular metabolism shifts into overdrive. Your vision sharpens, your muscles feel like coiled springs, and your brain fires with a clarity that borders on precognition. You feel like a god. But in this world, being a god is a death sentence. Because if you feel this powerful, imagine what the creatures who evolved here feel like. You are standing in a world where the laws of scale have been rewritten. Around you, the trees, the lepidodendrons, soar 150 feet into the air. They aren't wood, they are giant, scaly stalks of green tissue pulsating with sap. The ground is a carpet of moss so deep it swallows your boots. But the silence is the first thing that haunts you. There are no birds, no songs, just a low, subsonic thrumming that makes the water in the nearby swamp ripple in perfect concentric circles. The intrigue of the Carboniferous isn't just in the size, it's in the specialized lethality. You hear it before you see it, a sound like a deck of cards being shuffled by a giant, thwip, thwip, thwip. A shadow crosses the sun. You look up, expecting a pterodactyl, but those won't exist for another 100 million years. Instead, you see Meganeura. With a wingspan of nearly 30 inches, it is a dragonfly the size of an eagle. But here is the mystery that baffled scientists for decades. How could a creature with no lungs, relying only on passive air tubes, tracheae, power a body that large? The answer is the oxygen pressure. The air was so dense with O2 that it didn't just drift into their bodies, it was forced in. This turned Meganeura into a biological jet engine. It doesn't hover like a modern dragonfly, it patrols. Its eyes, massive hemispherical domes, can track 300 images per second. To the Meganeura, you are moving in slow motion. It dives. It doesn't want your blood. It wants the primitive amphibian cowering near your boot. In a blur of chitin and shimmering gossamer wings, the predator strikes, its mandibular mask snapping shut with the force of a bear trap. The swamp returns to its eerie thrum. As you move deeper into the forest, the humidity becomes an entity of its own. Every surface is slick, every breath a meal. You step over a fallen log, but the log moves. This is Arthropleura. At nearly 8.5 feet long, it is the largest terrestrial invertebrate to ever walk the earth. It looks like a nightmare birthed from a millipede in a tank. Its body is composed of 30 reinforced segments, each supported by a pair of powerful multi-jointed legs. The intrigue here lies in the armor paradox. To grow this large, an Arthropleura must molt. It must shed its entire 8-foot-long exoskeleton. For a few hours, this titan is a soft, pulsating mass of flesh, vulnerable to even the smallest scavengers. How did they survive this? They sought oxygen sanctuaries, deep flooded hollows of lycopod stumps where the air was still and the predators were few. You watch as the creature ripples past. It doesn't hiss, it doesn't roar. It simply exists as a force of nature. But as you watch it, you notice something terrifying. There are bite marks in its rear armor. Something in these woods was brave enough or big enough to hunt a 2-meter armored centipede. Why did this world exist? It wasn't an accident, it was a biological conspiracy. During the Carboniferous, plants had invented a new material, lignin. This gave trees their height and strength, but there was a catch. Nothing on Earth knew how to eat it yet. Bacteria and fungi hadn't evolved the enzymes to break down lignin. When a 100-foot tree fell, it didn't rot, it just lay there. Then another fell on top of it, and another. Thousands of miles of dead, undecaying timber covered the continents. This stolen carbon stayed trapped in the ground. Since no bacteria were consuming oxygen to rot the wood, the oxygen levels skyrocketed. The world was a ticking time bomb. You were walking on a literal powder keg. With 35% oxygen, the smallest spark from a falling rock or a lightning strike wouldn't just start a fire, it would create a super atmospheric conflagration. The very air you breathe is flammable. As the sun, a pale, distant disk in the hazy Carboniferous sky, begins to dip below the horizon, the true horror of the oxygen empire reveals itself. In our modern world, night is a time of cooling and quiet. In the Carboniferous, night is a heavy, suffocating blanket of activity. With the sun gone, the 35% oxygen atmosphere retains heat with terrifying efficiency. The temperature barely drops. The humidity rises until you feel as though you were breathing through a wet sponge. But the most striking change is the light. Because the air is so pure, the stars do not twinkle. They burn like cold, steady diamonds. And beneath them, the forest begins to glow. This is the luminescent trap. Without the enzymes to break down the massive piles of fallen lepidodendron logs, certain primitive fungi have evolved a different strategy: bioluminescence. Entire groves of 30-foot-tall fungi, known as prototaxites, begin to emit a ghostly, sickly green light. It isn't for beauty, it is a beacon for the giants. You hunker down inside the hollowed-out trunk of a fallen tree, but you are not alone. Something is scratching at the other side of the bark. You click on your flashlight, and the beam hits a pair of eyes the size of dinner plates. The stealth stalker, Pulmonoscorpius. This is Pulmonoscorpius kirktemensis, the breathing scorpion. It is nearly a meter long, but its size isn't the most intriguing part. Unlike modern scorpions, which are mostly blind and rely on vibrations, Pulmonoscorpius has massive, complex lateral eyes. It sees you. It doesn't scuttle away. In this high-oxygen environment, its metabolism is so fast that it moves with the twitchy, explosive speed of a modern spider despite its weight. Its stinger isn't just a defensive tool, it is a pressurized needle. Because of the atmospheric pressure, the venom is injected with hydraulic force. The intrigue lies in its hunting strategy. It doesn't just wait, it uses the green glow of the fungi to silhouette its prey. You watch from your hiding spot as the scorpion intercepts a primitive lizard-like Hylonomus. The reptile is fast, but the scorpion is a product of an oxygen-rich super engine. In a fraction of a second, the pincer snaps, the tail whips over, and the lizard is liquefied from the inside out. The forest isn't the only place where the scale of life has gone mad. You decide to move toward the coast, hoping the sea breezes will offer some reprieve from the oppressive jungle. But as you reach the shoreline, you realize the water is not a sanctuary. It is a laboratory for even greater monsters. In the brackish lagoons, the Eurypterids, sea scorpions, are undergoing a terrifying evolutionary transition. The most formidable among them is Hibbertepterus. Imagine a creature that looks like a cross between a horseshoe crab and a nightmare, spanning over 2 meters in width. It has a massive shovel-shaped head and a body covered in thick, knobby armor. For millions of years, these giants ruled the deep, but the high oxygen levels have given them a new gift, the ability to walk on land. The intrigue of the Eurypterid breach is the aerial weightlessness. Because the air is so dense, it provides a slight but significant buoyancy. Hibbertepterus can drag its massive bulk out of the water, its gills kept moist by the 90% humidity. You find yourself standing on a beach of black volcanic sand, watching a march of the titans. Dozens of these 2-meter monsters are crawling out of the surf, their many legs leaving deep, alien furrows in the sand. They aren't here to sunbathe. They are here to raid the inland pools for the eggs of the first amphibians. It is a slow-motion invasion, a silent war between the giants of the sea and the giants of the land. You hunker down inside the hollowed-out trunk of a fallen tree, but you are not alone. Something is scratching at the other side of the bark. You click on your flashlight, and the beam hits a pair of eyes the size of dinner plates. The stealth stalker, Pulmonoscorpius. This is Pulmonoscorpius kirktonensis, the breathing scorpion. It is nearly a meter long, but its size isn't the most intriguing part. Unlike modern scorpions, which are mostly blind and rely on vibrations, Pulmonoscorpius has massive, complex lateral eyes. It sees you. It doesn't scuttle away. In this high-oxygen environment, its metabolism is so fast that it moves with the twitchy, explosive speed of a modern spider, despite its weight. Its stinger isn't just a defensive tool, it is a pressurized needle. Because of the atmospheric pressure, the venom is injected with hydraulic force. The intrigue lies in its hunting strategy. It doesn't just wait. It uses the green glow of the fungi to silhouette its prey. You watch from your hiding spot as the scorpion intercepts a primitive, lizard-like Hylonomus. The reptile is fast, but the scorpion is a product of an oxygen-rich super engine. In a fraction of a second, the pincer snaps, the tail whips over, and the lizard is liquefied from the inside out.
By now you've realized that the greatest threat in the Carboniferous isn't the stingers or the mandibles, it is the air itself. High oxygen is a double-edged sword. It creates giants, but it also creates total flammability. In our world, a forest fire needs dry wood and a spark. In the oxygen empire, a forest fire can start in a rainstorm. You see a flash of lightning in the distance. In the modern world, you would wait for the thunder. Here, the lightning strike hits a stand of resin-heavy sigillaria trees, and the result is not a fire, it is an explosion. The 35% oxygen acts as an accelerant. The tree doesn't just catch fire, it vaporizes. Within minutes, the horizon is a wall of white-hot flame. This is the Carboniferous Inferno, a recurring event that shaped the evolution of the period. Because the fires were so intense and frequent, the charcoal layers in the fossil record from this time are the thickest in Earth's history. The intrigue deepens. How did the giant insects survive a world that was constantly exploding? The answer lies in their deep earth retreats. The Arthropleura and the Pulmonoscorpius evolved to burrow deep into the mineral soil, where the oxygen concentration was slightly lower and the heat couldn't reach. They became the masters of the subterranean world, waiting for the surface to cool so they could emerge and reclaim their charred kingdom. There is a smaller, more insidious intrigue within the oxygen empire. If the insects are giants, what about the things that live on them? As you examine a shed casing of a Meganeura, you notice something moving in the joints of the chitin. These are giant mites, the size of marbles. In our world, a mite is invisible to the naked eye. Here, they are like armored ticks feeding on the hemolymph, insect blood, of the titans. The oxygen empire wasn't just a world of big predators, it was a nested hierarchy of giants. Even the bacteria were different. Because there was so much oxygen, aerobic bacteria were hyper-efficient. An open wound on an Arthropleura wouldn't just get infected over days, it would be consumed by fungal bacterial mats within hours. Survival in this world required a specialized immune system. The giant insects developed chitinous cysts. They could literally wall off an infection by growing a layer of armor inside their own bodies. They were biological fortresses, fighting a war on the outside against fire and predators, and a war on the inside against hyperactive parasites. For nearly 60 million years, the oxygen empire seemed eternal.
But the Earth is a restless machine, and the very continents that provided the stage for these monsters began to turn against them. The two supercontinents, Laurasia and Gondwana, finally slammed into each other, forging the Titan continent of Pangaea. This wasn't just a geological shift, it was a climactic execution. The intrigue of the Pangaean crisis lies in the moisture trap. When the land masses merged, the interior of the continent became so vast that the moist sea breezes could no longer reach its heart. The green cathedral, those endless dripping swamps of 150-foot lycopods, began to fragment. The water table dropped. The black, oily swamps that served as the nurseries for the Meganeura larvae began to evaporate into cracked mud. For the giant insects, this was the beginning of the end. Their life cycle was tethered to the water. A Meganeura nymph spent years underwater as a predatory monster before taking to the sky. As the swamps vanished, an entire generation of giants was locked out of existence. They were the masters of the sky, but they were slaves to the puddle. But the true intrigue, the darkest twist in this 300-million-year-old story, is the oxygen crash. The plants had been too successful. By burying all that carbon as unrotted wood, they had pushed oxygen levels to a dizzying 35%. But as the climate dried out, the great forests began to die. When they died, they finally began to rot. The fungi and bacteria that had been lazy for millions of years finally evolved the tools to break down lignin. As the wood rotted, it consumed oxygen, massive amounts of it. You are standing in the forest of the late Carboniferous, and for the first time you feel a hint of dizziness, not from too much oxygen, but from its sudden absence. The level drops from 35% to 30%, then 25%, then crashes toward 15%. For the Arthropleura, this is a death sentence. Imagine a 200-pound athlete suddenly forced to breathe through a thin straw while wearing a heavy suit of armor. Because their passive breathing system relied on high atmospheric pressure, the drop in oxygen meant their inner tissues began to starve. The giants didn't die from predators, they died from a global shortness of breath. They became lethargic, their massive muscles unable to twitch, their armored segments becoming a tomb they were too weak to carry. As the giants wheezed their last breaths, the intrigue shifts to a new, smaller player. While the insects were relying on the atmosphere to do the work for them, a group of small, lizard-like creatures, the amniotes, developed a revolutionary technology, the lung. Unlike the insects, these early reptiles didn't wait for oxygen to drift into their bodies. They had bellows to suck it in. They were active breathers. As the oxygen levels fell, the reptiles didn't care. They were the engineers of the new world. The most terrifying moment of this transition is the revenge of the prey. You watch as a group of small, agile reptiles, no longer than your forearm, surround a dying, suffocating Pulmonoscorpius. A few million years ago, the scorpion would have annihilated them. Now, the scorpion is too weak to lift its stinger. The reptiles, powered by their efficient lungs, begin to tear at the scorpion's joints. The hierarchy of the world has flipped. The era of the internal skeleton has begun. The final chapter of the Oxygen Empire is not written in bone, but in fire. As you prepare to leave this dying world, you look at the ground beneath you. You are standing on a graveyard of giants, trillions of tons of compressed wood, dead insects, and charcoal from the great fires. Over the next 300 million years, the weight of the Earth will press this graveyard into a black, dense rock. This is the ultimate irony of the Carboniferous. The giants died because the world stored too much carbon. Today, humans dig up that carbon. Every time we burn coal, we are releasing the sun energy that was trapped by a lepidodendron 300 million years ago. We are literally unburying the Carboniferous.
When you flip a light switch, you might be using the power of a forest where a 30-inch dragonfly once hunted. We are the ghosts of the oxygen empire, living off the remains of a world that choked on its own success.
You step back into your capsule. The hiss of the seal reminds you of the Meganeura's wings. As the door closes, you realize that the oxygen empire never truly left us. It just shrank. The dragonflies in your backyard are the ghosts of the titans. They carry the same blueprint, the same predatory DNA, and the same terrifying efficiency. They are simply waiting. If the Earth ever decides to boost its oxygen levels again, if the swamps return and the carbon is buried once more, the giants will return. The golden cage of the 21% oxygen atmosphere is the only thing keeping us at the top of the food chain. We are only the masters of the Earth because the bugs can't breathe.